FM. We're also streaming from that SuperTalk Mississippi app and your local SuperTalk Mississippi radio station. But don't forget about watching us. You can find us on your computer, your mobile device. Just head on over to SuperTalk TV. Now, you were introduced to Gertrude's Garden in McComb about a year ago here on Good Things. And the founder, Kevin Brown, he's back today joining us in studio. He can add a published author to his resume of other great things he's done. So welcome back, Kevin.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
I loved your story then about Gertrude's Garden, and obviously other folks are catching on it too because you guys won a little award.
We did. Keep Mississippi Beautiful presented Gertrude's Garden with Civic Group First Place Award for the work that not only myself but the team of people that believe in those two things, planting seeds of hope and together we grow. So we were recognized with that award. Our garden coordinator, Glenda Jordan, it was presented to her, and she couldn't make it. So myself and one of our county supervisors, Justin Lofton, we were able to come up to the country club at Jackson and receive the award and bring it back to Glenda. So
what's it like seeing your work being recognized on that kind of level?
It's awesome. It's awesome because the story spreads. It's inspirational to a lot of people, a lot of communities. I get to speak with a lot of people from different municipalities that are interested in how we did that work and how it works for us. So it's awesome to be a part of something that people are interested in duplicating in their own communities.
Because it can be duplicated
yes.
with the right sort of mindset and obviously a team approach. You've got wonderful people under you who are helping you make that a success. For those who maybe weren't listening to Good Things the last time you were here, Kevin, give us a little synopsis of like Gertrude's Garden and the importance it is there in McComb.
Sure. So I'm sure they were listening because a lot of people check in with you. But Gertrude's Garden is a communal green space in the Berglund community of McComb, the historic Berglund district, where my grandmother owned a store back in the 40s and the 50s. Her name was Gertrude. By the time I got a hold of the property, it being passed around through our family, it was overgrown. It was basically a landfill. So I decided to start a garden there, and I reached out to people in my network like Sarah Doman. She's a flower farmer and an art teacher in our school district. And we've done things before as far as art goes. So she provided some plants for us to start with. And that's kind of the origin of Gertrude's Garden. My grandmother's name was Gertrude. So I named the garden after her as a placekeeper to the legacy that she had prior to. And even though she's passed on, there's things that we can do in contemporary times to further that legacy as far as being a productive part of the community.
Right, and I think you're right, Kevin. So many people listening to Good Things, they have those spots in their own communities. And what do we do with them? Do you build something new? Do you turn it into something more useful? The whole point of it is that you made it into something the community could gather community and then be able to utilize. And sometimes it is as simple, although it's not always easy with a garden. It can be as easy as just planting some flowers or creating just a safe space where they can gather and do art and other things.
Absolutely, and that's why I describe it as a communal, because it's community participants. We have a lot of public art out there now, a lot more than last year. So it's also a platform for artists to come and express themselves visually, right? And through that art, we're able to do visual storytelling. Because I'm not a native of McComb or Berglund, that neighborhood. I'm from Louisiana originally.
We forgive you.
Right, and I moved there back in 2018. So the people that are there, through their art, they're able to tell the story of the community through a visual way, whether that's an interpretive mural, whether it's just some creative placekeeping from one of the spaces in the garden. It's a concrete slab, and I always referred to it as the slab. That's the connection that I had with it. Over the years, people have always referred to it as Miss Josie's, Josie''. So I started wanting to learn the legacy of Miss Josie's. So on that slab, we actually painted it, and it has Miss Josie's Cafe. It has the food menu. It has the pool table that everybody used to dance on. That's how packed it used to be. And it has a jukebox. So that visual storytelling, that slab is actually a visual representation of the floor plan of something that was so significant to the neighborhood, to where we were able to capture it through art.
This is crazy, just so the progression of what started out as you just inheriting a lot and then wanting it to look better.
Right.
And I think oftentimes when we hear these great stories here on Good Things, and I say this all the time because I feel like people, they're inspired by it, but then they're scared by it. It's like, well, I don't want my flower garden to turn into like that. And it doesn't necessarily have to for you, but it may also just slowly over time grow into something you can handle and it have a bigger impact than you ever thought, just by you starting with some flowers would look nice there.
Absolutely. Like one of those things, planting seeds of hope. Hope is a different thing to all different sorts of people. So, and a community garden, there's no community without you and I. So not just my vision. I had to incorporate the people that actually live there in that space, because it's between an apartment complex and a convenience store. So this is really a residential area, even though it's commercial mixed because of that store. This is someone's actual living space. So the intent to improve it by removing the debris, planting flowers, the aesthetics, there's an actual story to be told. So that's been revealed because these artists are local artists. They're from Berglund. So it's a really personal thing. And like I always said, I thought I was rehabbing the space, but the space has been rehabbing me, giving me time to think about things in different ways, understanding different perspectives. Before, when I was on, I brought up the term cultural humility, which basically means just because you have an idea doesn't mean it's the best idea for that space. So bringing those artists in, I call them a community of artists. They're able to express themselves in different ways and highlight all those things that we've long forgotten about, the youth, and or sometimes introduce them to, because that slab has been there so long. The kids would have no connection to who Miss Josie was. Right. So that visual representation produces a conversation piece for dialogue, education, and inspiration, because she was a business owner. So when you talk about being a business owner in spaces like that, it can be an inspiration to someone that said, well, she did it, a little girl. Right. I can do it too.
Yes, you can. And then also, too, just getting to see the different ways that people express what they're thinking about their community through their different sort of forms of art, I think is really cool. And then being able to take pride in something, maybe for the first time within their community, seeing something that, like, drove by, I'm thinking about all the little school buses going back and forth to, school now. And it's like, look at the flowers blooming, or look at the, this, or see the art installation there versus, whatever. You're probably not having a thought about the trash. It's just driving by and it sparked no kind of conversation or thought.
Absolutely. Before I was calling it an inspiration desert, because what was there to be nourished by in that space? We always find things if we're searching, but in that space, I called it an inspiration desert because most people, when they pass through that section of St. Augustine, they wouldn't even look down there because it was so unattractive to where, why would I even look that way? I'm going to look forward. I'm going to look on the opposite side. So the opportunity to reimagine that space is been great, because like you said, the kids, when they pass by on the bus, they're actually looking to see what's going on in that space, versus, because all the colors are vibrant, even the playground equipment. I don't know if we had that last year.
I don't think so.
Yeah, so now we have a swing, we have 2 basketball goals, we have
how big's the lot?
It's how
big was Gertrude's house?
Right. Her store was a corner, a little neighborhood store, but her lot, we actually took over multiple lots to this point.
Gotcha.
So we started with the one lot, now we're up to 4. So basically the whole block, right? And we don't own those. We don't have deeds to those properties. But if those people could maintain those properties, they would have anyway. So we understand that we're relieving a burden to a certain degree to at least keep the grass down and beautify it. So from one lot that was kind of central and surrounded, we're 4 lots from the actual St. Augustine going down what's now called Gertrude's Garden Alley, because the street was renamed.
That's awesome. And the inspiration for your new book, Kevin, which we'll get to that and more coming up next here. To Good Things. We are streaming live over at SuperTalk.fm. We hope you have downloaded that SuperTalk Mississippi app where you can stream us live there too. We're always on your local SuperTalk Mississippi radio station, and don't forget about watching us. You can do that easily on your computer, your mobile device. Just head on over to SuperTalk TV. We're continuing our conversation with Kevin Brown. He's the founder of Gertrude's Garden, I guess now Gertrude's Alley there in McComb. Yeah, 4 lots there that's now sort of taken over as this idea of giving back to the community, from flowers to gardens to equipment for the kids to play on, basketball goals, and then obviously art installation. And I can see how all of that, Kevin, inspired you to write your book, Creative Catalyst, Art and Advocacy, a Powerful Connection for Social Change. Was part of this from everybody asking you your story and then how you did it? And you were kind of like, okay, just read the book. Kind of?
Yeah, kind of. That definitely played a role in it. I think just documenting the story, because it wasn't our plan originally to be at this state, so we didn't have a lot of pictures of what it looked like before and things like that. So what I noticed for me writing, being an author, this is my 3rd book, it's easier for me to capture things that already happened than to approach it any other way. So a lot of my advocacy is included in this book. It includes national things, international examples, but I had enough to start each chapter of the book, just in my own personal experience. And then I had other creatives in the community to use examples from, whether it was Kanisha Sibley, she's the fine arts director at the school district, or Sarah Doman, the flower farmer, or Manuel Scott from Scott Photography. What I realized was the spectrum of art is so wide. Basically, we're saying use your creativity to change things, right? So art, there's visual, there's music, theater, performance arts, culinary, literary, so many art forms. I could exchange it for creativity, right? So that's why I titled it Creative Catalyst, because I didn't want people to be pigeonholed into saying, well, I don't draw, I don't do this, or I don't do that. But you imagine things and you bring them into a physical space for everybody to enjoy. So, and
I would challenge too, your gardeners listening, your farmers listening, that's a form of flowers to vegetables. I mean, that's all we've heard stories time after again, and you probably do it and don't even know it when you have extra tomatoes, and then you give it, you give them away at church, or you sort of share that, the sharing of that, of what you were good at, even if it's the zucchini bread you made with your 1,500 zucchinis that came off the vine. That is a form of paying it forward and a change of good.
And that's what the book is about. Creative Catalyst, Art and Advocacy, a Powerful Connection for Social Change. So I term myself a community advocate, so much so that other people call me that. So that's pretty solidified by what I've been able to work with. But the art piece, I find it is a very great vehicle to advocate for things. So I was telling you about the communal art space, Gertrude's Garden, that has these different art installations. They all speak to the people of that community. So that's not a one-sided thing. People that come and visit get to learn about the community through art. I mean, the people are self-advocating for themselves through their art because they're sharing the story of their community. And I just wanted to share this little Chapter 2, Amplifying Stories of Change Through Native Artistic Voices. So these are artists that are naturally from this community. Native artists like Timothy Cameron play a crucial role in amplifying a community's voice through art. Timothy's intimate understanding of the community's history, culture, and nuances allows him to create artwork that resonates deeply with residents and contributes to preserving cultural heritage. So earlier I was talking about Miss Josie's, right? I had, no matter how many people told me about her and told me stories about her, someone that actually grew up when that building was physically there actually went in there, saw people dancing on the pool tables, put a quarter in the jukebox, had one of her lunch specials, because it rotated every day, with a cup of Kool-Aid. That's on the menu board. That's a whole different understanding of what was going on. And with Timothy, he's done so much art in the greater Berglund community and also in McComb, to where none of his stuff has ever been vandalized. So I knew his work would be good
Respected.
to go, respected, and there's multiple people from that neighborhood that have done art out there, including the children. So that connection to ownership is really important, and it helps to preserve not only the history and the culture, but the actual art itself.
I love what you're saying, Kevin, and I feel like there's so many good intended nonprofits or groups or churches that go into communities that on the outside clearly need help either cleaning up or, you name it. And they just come in with their ideas and their money and start doing it. And then it doesn't last or it doesn't sort of take. And it's just taking that extra time to ask the natives, see what really needs, because every community's voice is a little bit different.
For sure.
And it has, every street, block, zip code, you can take Mississippi from the Delta to the coast. So we're one big family, but we're two different.
For sure.
We're two different, ways of living. And that even narrows down within your own towns and communities. Everybody knows. I'm from the Brandon area. You got New Brandon, you got Old Brandon, you got, all the sort of different nuances. And so it's really about getting to know before you just start rushing to act and sort of implement things.
For sure. The local community, the community of artists, they're guiding things, because just having those conversations about what does this mean, and how do you feel about this, those type of questions, because I'm one of the caretakers of the garden. But that doesn't put me in a position to say is my way or no way. Usually, we're to the point now to where the caretakers, Glenda Jordan is the coordinator, but the caretakers, we're being advised by the community stakeholders. We're partners. I'll say it that way. We're a team and we're partners, and that's a big jump from a year ago, to be honest with you. Besides the children, but the other adults that spend a lot of time in that space, we're receiving consultation, and they're receiving consultation because everyone has something to offer. But the goal is to meet in the middle and be the most productive with the time that we have in the space that we have. That it benefits and it makes sense in that space.
This may be a silly question, Kevin, but how do those in their community find their local artists? I know that sounds silly, but I've sat on a lot of different boards and organizations and committees for all kinds of things, for especially like healthy changes and other sort of changes within communities. And I'm sitting here thinking of all the health professionals and all the professionals that have come and sat around a table. And I don't know if we've ever had like a local artist, because I'm now I'm thinking, gosh, that was such a seat that was missing at the table. So how do you find those local musicians or sculptors or painters, or even, God forbid, say those that go and do like the artwork on graffiti? I was like, but those are those are the people who know your community.
That's right. So a lot of times the easiest way for me is to ask who did that. Right.
And they snitch.
Right. They snitch. But if it's something beautiful, right, that we decide that's beautiful, most of the time they can tell you. Because when I went into this community, I didn't know of any artist, but I started noticing the lettering style of almost everything was the same. So then the question for me to ask was, who's doing all this lettering? Right. And that's how he came up. And then with the school district, they do a lot of contests, kind of artist calls. And a lot of the creative arts centers in different towns, they're usually a good source because they're traditionally doing art things. And I know a lot of them bring people in from out of town, but just searching high and low, really, to be honest, and using all those techniques to find out who these people are, where they are. And the more you have just regular dialogue with people in the community, the more those things starts to surface anyway. Anything that you're looking for, it'll come up, or they'll refer you to someone they may know. But with Timothy, it was all around anyway. And then there's another guy, I think his name was Michael Lewis. He's passed on, but he was Timothy's predecessor, because it always seems like there's one person that does a bunch of public art. But we try to data mine and find the next generation of them. So I go into the school district. I had an exhibit called Perspectives from Generations Beyond the Dream. And that was specifically for school districts, for kids to illustrate their interpretation of Dr. King's dream. So I got to see everybody's skill set every year.
Yeah.
And that was like 4 or 5 years ago.
And then you get to bring them in, ask them questions, and give them opportunity to grow their art and also to advocate for their town, which I think is really cool. All right, stick with us. We got more with Kevin. Don't forget, we're always streaming live over at supertalk.fm and from that SuperTalk Mississippi app. You can always find us, too, on that local SuperTalk Mississippi radio station. Don't forget about SuperTalk TV. We're on your computer or your mobile device. And don't forget, too, that art is a form of advocacy, which is what our guest here, Kevin Brown, he's the author of Creative Catalyst. I love that. Art and advocacy, a powerful connection for social change. The word advocacy can feel weighty sometimes, Kevin. I love that you add in just connection for social change. How would you, if someone was like, ooh, I don't know if I want to get into like advocacy, but what really would, because I like earlier you mentioned something about just using it for good. Sort of disarm advocacy. It's not the scary word that you think it is. Like, what, in your terms, what's the most simplest way to explain it? So
when I talk to younger people, I say, tell me something that you care about. And they do. Their pets, their family, their sports. And I said, if you wanted to recommend it to someone, or if you wanted to inform someone about it, or if you wanted to educate someone about it, that's what advocacy is. You're basically highlighting something that you care about and raising awareness about it. So for me as a community advocate, my focus is to amplify the community's voice. It's not necessarily these ideas and principles that I have. Now, they get shaped by those things, but my goal is to amplify the community's voice. So with the Gertrude's Garden, with the visual art installations, we're amplifying that story that they've been telling me orally for these few years. Now we're putting it in a visual art form so everyone can see it. And like I said, for kids, it presents a new normal. Those kids weren't even born when Miss Josie's, for example,
or your grandmother,
or my grandmother. But the visual art installations actually tell the story. And for them to come out and ask questions, it increases dialogue. And it actually forms bonds in the community in that way, because we don't communicate the same way that my grandmother did or beyond. Everything's texting or TikTok but to walk through a space, connecting to nature too, these are just things that we don't engage in anymore as generations go along. So it reintroduces them to a lot of things that were the foundations to the community, the word community. It kind of reintroduces that to them and adds it to their algorithm. To use a current term, these things, they come from somewhere. So we kind of keep layering in, putting context to things to where it just makes sense and it reoccurs and it aligns. So that's the goal.
So with this book, Art and Advocacy, who is the right reader? Everybody needs to read it. But if someone was listening, going, man, I would love to start a Gertrude's Garden type something, or we've got a lot of untapped potential in terms of using artists wherever they are, schools. How do you use it when you pick it up and sort of read it? Is it a guidebook? Is it more of an inspiration book? Is it a how-to book? How would you describe it?
It's all of those. So the way it's constructed is that each chapter starts out with traditionally a personal narrative. And prior to that, there's a quote. It kind of gives you the space to start to think about things differently. So there's one quote: art is not just about decoration, because that's how most people perceive art. It's a powerful tool for social change. It amplifies voices, challenges perceptions, and ignites movements, right? And I attribute to whoever wrote that. And then it goes into the chapter 2, that I brought up earlier, amplifying stories of change through native artistic voices. And it starts out, my engagement in community advocacy within the Berglund neighborhood of McComb connects me with individuals from various walks of life. So after you get my personal interpretation of that, I go into examples like Native artists like Timothy Cameron, talk about the work that he's done. You know, Rosalind Landrews, her work that she's done. And then in some of the chapters, it goes into a national or statewide or national or international examples, because if people can't connect to what I'm talking about, my interpretation, to the artists that I have worked with, maybe they could connect with someone they can hold to a different standard, right? Whatever the case may be. So beyond that, there's a section in that each chapter, there's strategies for how to implement using Native artists. Then there's a reflection question at the end of each chapter. So I hit you 3 times each chapter with a method that anybody can tap into. And it gives you a whole bunch of examples of things you can do in your community. Things I haven't even done. It's just things that I've researched.
I feel like every nonprofit, every community board, every whatever needs it. Like somebody needs it. Y'all need it. It needs to be before your board retreat, before all of that. Like to sort of read it and sort of think about it sort of differently, go about things in a little bit different way. During the break, Kevin, we were sort of talking about to music, and you were saying regardless of what the lyrics are, it's an outlet, it's an expression from those particular artists. I like the idea of being challenged to, even if you don't always like what's being said, that individual is expressing something and somehow communicating or connecting. Maybe it's not you, but just collectively talking and better understanding what's driving it, and then countering that with the same style or whatever, but more, positive messaging for kids to kids.
I think you have to understand to be understood. So when we're talking to kids, I say if you want to know the current thought process of kids, the music of the time is the soundtrack to it.
Which is scary.
So it is. But I haven't, as long as I've been alive, each era, at least from the 80s, Michael Jackson, Prince, whatever the case was going on, each era carried a message through music, especially when you talk about urban music, for example, because they're basically reporting what's going on in their community, right, in their lives. So if you really want to know what they're thinking, listen to the music, which, I mean, it could be a lot. And but that's just my suggestion. People can interact with it, engage it, however they so please. But like you said, if you're not into listening to some of those things, just the awareness of it and having, summits, teen summits and teen conversations, let's talk, all those things, kids are always going to say you don't understand. And to some degree, you don't. So there's these context clues to what's actually happening that we may or may not want to tap into, but that's just something that I share with people.
Well, and I think that's where art can come in and sometimes say things, or they say things, you interpret things that you don't want to actually hear out loud.
It's up to you. What does this mean?
In that way. But, and I think going back to what you said in the beginning, Kevin, too, that art's not just music, although that's one, or sculpting or painting. You're also talking about culinary arts. You're talking about gardening. You're talking about all these other things, and just challenging each, like how can you use the gifts and talents that you have, and then being able to create some form of good. And that is how you change your community. It
is. Just think about something like interior decorating, making a space more welcoming, right, to your target audience. So if you have some kids and you want to set the tone for how this summer camp experience is going to be, for example, right? Someone that has those skills, it could change the whole trajectory of their attitude towards what's going on, how they receive their information, how they retain the information. We can use a whole bunch of examples of how the creativity really affects things if we really slow down and think about it. And I've been one of those people that just thought art was something pretty. But during this journey, I've seen the transformative effects of using creativity and how it changes mannerisms. It changes a whole bunch of stuff once you start to delve into it. I'm looking at your logo up there, the S and the T. And some people see a microphone and a microphone stand, but it's SuperTalk. So branding is important because that just gets stuck in people's minds, and it becomes a part of their daily thought process.
I've never seen the T. Look at there. I saw something different today. I always thought the microphone. I mean, I knew the S was there, but yeah. Well, look at there. See? It's case in point. You know, everybody sees things a little bit differently. Right. How can we get the book, Kevin?
It is on Amazon. Creative Catalyst, Art and Advocacy. Last time I was here, I talked about the Berkeley Sound Activity book.
Oh, yes.
And I live on a street named St. Augustine. So this one's on Amazon. I go to different platforms around in Jackson or New Orleans, so you might see it at a bookstore or something like that. I also wanted to say me and my partner, Rosalind Landrews, we have a book coming out called the LCF, Love, Connection, and Freedom. It's a joint book. We both submitted stories and made one book. And then the second piece is called Focus. It's a coffee table book. So it's photography that we've taken just over time about things that fit that narrative, love, connection, and freedom. So that means a lot of things to different people, but that's what we highlighted.
If we search your name and on Amazon, will it all come up?
All of it's going to come up.
Gotcha.
All the books.
What's coming up this fall in Gertrude's Garden?
We're going to have our Fall Fest that we always have. And then, of course, the Thanksgiving meal is when we feed over 200 people to treat them to a meal, catered meal for Thanksgiving. And then we'll be doing our fall planning.
Busy.
Yeah,
looks like we're going to have you back.
Perennials down.
We're going to have to continue this conversation another time, Kevin. I truly appreciate your time and all you're doing in McComb. So
thank you.
All right, you guys stick with us. We got a few more good things coming up next.